So just take a deep breath in on that. And if it's comfortable, take a moment. Take another couple deep breaths with me. So first, exhale it all out, and then take a deep breath in. Let it go. Another deep breath in. Let it go. One more of those together. Breathe in and let it go. And let's just drop into a moment of stillness. Hmm. And so, good morning again. If you don't know me, I'm Reverend Elisha Christopher. I'm the spiritual director of the Center for Spiritual Living here in Santa Cruz. I do use they, them pronouns. My ancestors come to this country from all over the world, those most recently from Ireland, Scotland, Austria, and Holland. And I do have ancestors indigenous to the Americas as well. So it's a new month, it's May. This year, 2026, our theme across all of Centers for Spiritual Living, we have shared themes across our global organization. And this year, our theme is open at the top. And this comes from a phrase from the founder of Science of Mind named Ernest Holmes, who said that this philosophy that he synthesized, that he gave us called the Science of Mind, he says it's open at the top. He says it's grounded, it's rooted on the bottom, but it's open at the top. Right? That there are basic core ideas that are central to this teaching, and then the idea is that it's meant to continue to evolve. And that's also an invitation to each and every one of us that we are also meant to continue to evolve, to continue this journey of becoming, and that whatever it is, conceptions we've made about ourselves, whatever conceptions we've made about life, whatever patterns we've inherited, that the idea is to continue to let those grow and not just stagnate into what is. And so this month, our theme is divine doubt, which I've been chewing on for a few days, which I think is very fun. And I read something powerful, and I believe this was an Ernest Holmes quote that was in some of the notes that we share across the movement. And he said, "The opposite of faith isn't doubt. The opposite of faith is certainty." I know. That's how I felt. The opposite of faith isn't doubt. The opposite of faith is certainty, right? That certainty is this thing that says, I know what's going on, right? Certainty says, I have the answers. It says, the questions have already been answered, so I don't have to answer, I don't have to ask them, right? I lived in Utah for almost 4 years and spent a lot of time around folks involved in the Mormon church. And I heard this phrase from the Mormon church people multiple times: you don't have to do the thinking, we've done the thinking for you. I know. And again, that says that our spiritual authority, our prophet, our ministers, our whoever have the answers. And so you're just supposed to come receive them, and we're supposed to give them to you. That's not faith, right? Faith isn't just blindly believing in something because someone else said it's true. One of my dear friend of mine says, anytime someone comes to you and says, God told me to tell you, don't believe what they say. Unless what they say is God is love. If there's any, but so all of that to say that divine doubt, that doubt is something that is required for this thing called faith, right? And I know that on my own spiritual journey, the thing that led me here, perhaps part of your spiritual journey that led you here as well, is questioning of truths that were given to me by spiritual traditions, by teachers, by parents, by thousands of years of tradition, where there were ideas that were taught to me about what God is and who I am and what's allowed and what's okay and what's acceptable and what's not. And it was that doubting of what I was hearing from the pulpit growing up that sent me out on a spiritual journey of questioning, a spiritual journey of seeking. And I think that if you're in this room, you're likely could put you under the umbrella, maybe, of someone called a spiritual seeker, right? And a spiritual seeker isn't someone who's certain they have all the answers. A spiritual seeker is someone who walks into life with a questioning, with a doubt about what's been said already, and says, I need to experience this for myself. I need to find out and discover and explore what is true, not just take what's true as true. Right? And so doubt is actually curiosity. And curiosity is actually what I think this whole month is about. It's about being in the spiritual practice of curiosity, being in the spiritual practice of doubting the things that appear to be so. And I think that if some of the people in this world could cultivate a little doubt, we might not be so confident with some of our convoluted ideas that we think are the best thing that should happen for the planet. Right? You see examples in our government, in our presidency, of people who have no conception of doubting a thought that moves through their own mind. And how many of us doubt ourselves when we have that thought about who we could be or what we could do or what we want to say or what we could bring to the world or how we want to show up, and then this other voice shows up and says, but hey, could you really do that? Are you really strong enough? Are you really smart enough? Are you really creative enough? Right? And so doubt is also this two-edged sword, because it can be the power that gives us our curiosity and drives us to seek new things and new ideas and go into the exploration, but it can also be the thing that shuts us down. Right? How many of us have had a calling of something that we've wanted to do in life, and then we've doubted that every step of the way? How many of us get decision paralysis because we're just afraid we might make the wrong decision? I see some hands, they're like this. The hands are like this. Don't doubt your truth, right? So, and that's the thing, it's like we've got to get out of our own way. We've got to get out of our way. And so there's this, we get to play with doubt this month, of also recognizing that there's this opportunity in doubting the basic truths of existence, whatever it is that you've thought about yourself. Maybe there's some deeper questions that can take us deeper into life, take us deeper into relationship with Spirit, take us deeper into relationship with each other, if we're willing to break down some of the absolute basic things that we believe to be true, like I'm up here and you're over there. We look out and we see separate individuals, and we've been conditioned as humans to see ourselves as individual things. But what if we were to doubt that as being actually true? That maybe there is something that connects us. Maybe there is a more of us that is here. Maybe that oneness thing that Elisha's always talking about, maybe there's something to it. You know, one of the things that I love about this philosophy and the Centers for Spiritual Living and the way that this teaching is spread around, when I first came to my first center and Reverend Grace Lovejoy was the minister, I remember her saying something on the first day, and she said, "Don't believe anything I say. Question it. Test it. Take it out with you today. Take it out into your week. Take it out into your family. Take it back to wherever you are existing in life and start to practice these ideas. If I'm telling you that your attention creates reality and that wherever you point your attention, whatever you give your energy to grows and becomes more of, and you can see it more clearly and it becomes more available to you, try it out. Go see what happens with where you're putting your attention and what shows up in your life. We talk about this idea that thoughts are creative. Abraham Hicks says that a thought is just a belief is just a thought that you keep thinking. And so if you have a thought that you keep thinking and you think that thought over and over and over again, eventually that thought becomes a belief. And that thought could be God is all there is, everyone is one, the planet is a living being. You can cultivate that thought over and over and over again. And you can also cultivate a thought like I'm not enough, All the things that happened to me in my life have traumatized me so bad I'm never going to heal. You could tell that story over and over and over again, and I guarantee you it will become a belief. And I think that we all have stories that run through our minds about who we are and what's happened to us and where we've been and what's possible and what's not possible and what's all the things. And how often do we question the narrative that's moving through our mind? Or do we just take those thoughts and go, yep, that's true, yep, that's true, yep, that's true. And then we stay in the same story. We continue to experience the same conditions, the same reality, the same story just plays itself over and over and over again until we question it. And when we start to question our basic truths, when we start to question our own story, when we start to question the voice inside of our head, perhaps then answers start to become available that weren't there in the first place. And I heard someone a while back say something that's been sparking around in my mind. It says, you always get the answer to the question that you ask, but you don't always ask the right question. You always get the answer to the question you ask, but we don't always ask the right question. And in order to ask the right question, we've got to question what is. We have to open ourselves up to realize that maybe I don't know everything about everything. Maybe. I know I don't, right? And there was a whole long period of time where people on this planet said we live on a flat plane of existence. And that was just the way it was, and everyone knew that to be true. And then somebody had the audacity to look out at the world and actually look at physical existence, look at how things are moving around, pay attention beyond what they've been told, and go, I know the collective agreement is that the world is flat, but if you get enough perspective, if you actually start to look, turns out it's a globe. And that was a heretical thought that got people killed. Right? And how much are we being told in various ways all over the place that the reality that we're seeing isn't the case? And I think that the propaganda machine that's taken over this country and is seeking to take over the world knows that if we just continue to tell people what is, they'll believe it. And then if we keep people distracted and keep people not so overwhelmed that we can't ask questions, that then whatever story gets prescribed to us, we end up believing. And I think that we've gotten where we are because a lot of people haven't questioned what is or what was. Right? I think many of the systems of oppression and many of the systems of fascism and many of the systems that have been rising up and moving and been part of the current of this country for hundreds of years have existed and have done what they've done because most people haven't questioned what was. And that we're moving into this time where all the stuff is happening and all the things are rising up and all the stuff's getting into our attention, and the field is getting scattered enough that I think as a collective we're starting to ask bigger questions. And those questions will lead us to the greater answers. Because we've been getting answers to the questions we've been asking all along, but I don't think many of us and all of us as a collective, I don't think we've been asking the right questions. And so this exploration of divine doubt this month is about inviting us all to open up our minds to possibility. We say this here almost every week. We're a community dedicated to possibility. If we're dedicated to possibility, then we have to be willing to ask questions that break our paradigm. We have to be willing to ask questions that shatter our conception of who we are or who the other is or what the story is about the world in which we've been living. And then the question becomes, are we ready for the answers? Are we ready for the answer to the bigger question? Because that might shake us up. If you actually ask the big questions, if I ask the big questions, if you ask the big questions, it might shake up your life. It might cause you to stand up, to speak up, to act up, to do something that maybe you've never been willing to do before. But now that you've asked a question and you've gotten the answer, you can't say no to it. Well, you can, but that's where the resistance and the struggle and all the unfortunate things start to show up, is when the universe says something and we go, yep, that's what I'm supposed to do, and then we go this way. Right? I mean, how many of us have done that? You've gotten the guidance, you've gotten the intuition, and so we're really good at doubting our intuition. We're really good at doubting the voice of God. We're really good at blah, 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 blah. Let's start to doubt the status quo. Let's start to doubt our past. Let's start to doubt history even, and start to open up the story and see if there's more here for us to discover. And then when we ask those big questions, when we're willing to explore the more, we then have to be willing to follow it wherever it leads us. Because we can ask the big questions and get the big ugly answers and go, nope. That's a way, right? But I think that the way is to ask the big questions, to get whatever those answers are, and then to go with it, to be in the curiosity, to ask more questions, to let the answer lead to another question, which leads to an answer, which leads to another question. That's the spiritual path. We talked about being here. We're all spiritual seekers. The purpose of the path is to follow the question, is to live in a question. You know, our Zen practitioner friends would give us the idea of a koan, right? We've heard me talk about this before. Find an unanswerable question that you are willing to contemplate. You know, we've all heard what's the sound of one hand clapping? Like, you know, there's an unanswerable question, but in the asking of the question, it breaks the mind open. It breaks the patterns of what we think we already know, and we open ourselves up to something else. And you all know, many of you know, if you've heard me speak before, I've said this 1,000 times. One of my unanswerable questions, you know, I teach a philosophy that tells me it's all one thing. There's only God. God is all there is. That's the first principle of this philosophy. So my unanswerable question, the thing that I contemplate every day when I turn on the news, when I see the horrible things that are happening, when I experience things in life that are difficult, whenever someone comes up and I go, ooh, you're an interesting expression of the one, I get to ask myself, how is this God? How is this God? How is this oneness showing up? How is this the one thing reflecting itself back to me? And if I choose to live my life in that unanswerable question that is sometimes twists up my brain in ways that I have to go on retreat and sit for a week and figure it out. And then I come back to you and I share you my thoughts. But that's the invitation, right? Is to, can we not be so attached to the way that we think things are or ought to be or were, and be willing to doubt what we see and ask if there's more here. Because I believe when I look out into the world and I see all of the conditions and all the things and all the despair and all the war, I know it's terrible. I know it's painful. It breaks my heart open. I tell you this all the time. I cry all the time because the world has my heart cracked open. And then I look into it and I have to know that there's more here than I can see. And I have to, on some level, doubt the validity of the reality to open myself up to the truth that there's something sacred, there's something more, there's something beautiful, there's something powerful that's seeking to rise up through all of this. And that maybe sometimes the pain is the thing that opens us up enough to question what we always thought we knew. You know, Michael Beckwith says, we're pushed by the pain until we're pulled by the vision. And I think collectively and globally, the pain's a pushing. I think we're going through a birthing here collectively as humanity. The pain is pushing. But hopefully that's the invitation that's waking us up to start asking new questions about how we can be differently. And it takes a little bit of that divine doubt to look at all the ways that we've done things in the past and up until now and are doing them currently and say, is there a way to do this differently? Maybe I doubt the validity of the structures that have held up this nation for 400 years. It's only from that place that we can envision new ones, to open up the greater question of how we build a world that works for all, how we build a nation that is thriving and supports all people. So this is our exploration this month, is to be in the curiosity, to be in the divine doubt, to be in the questioning of things. So take a deep breath and let it go. If it's comfortable for you, I invite you to close your eyes and take another deep breath in. And let it go. Take another deep breath. And so as we breathe together, I'm sure we can all at moments take it for granted that we are just breathing our bodies. But what if there's something more? So let us open in this moment to the idea that each one of us breathes. That there is perhaps indeed one life that is living and breathing throughout the entirety of the universe, one seamless field of existence. I choose to call it God. Some of us might simply call it the universe, or consciousness, or the quantum field, or the infinite sea of possibility, or just the one life. But I claim, know, and declare in this moment that there is indeed only one thing happening in all of existence, and it is this pure field of infinite potential. And that infinite potential and that source presence is moving through each and every body, is interwoven into every circumstance on this planet and in this great and glorious universe. And so I claim right here and right now for each one of us that we are divine beings, that we are more than we know, and that perhaps in some way each one of us has up until now been constrained by the idea of who we think we are or aren't, of what's happened to us or what we've done that is holding us back. But let's plant some seeds of doubt into those old stories that might begin to crack those old structures and allow each one of us to open up to a new version of who we could be, allow us to open up to new versions of the world that we want to live in, of the invention and the creation and the imagination of new ways of doing and being, of new systems, of new choices, of new activities, of new dreams. And so let this concept of divine doubt seed our curiosity, so that we begin to look at the world and each other with new eyes, so that we begin to look at ourselves with new eyes and open up to the truth that there is something so much more brilliant, beautiful, that is living and breathing within each one of us. It is so much more than we can comprehend. Each one of us, each person in this room, I, myself, I am the universe. Say that to yourself. I am the universe. I am God. I am the one life. And so from that place, let us be open to let the wholeness of who we are course through us in everything we do. Feel the powers of evolution are moving through our bodies. Feel that the powers of creation and potential and possibility move through our minds in every moment. Let us be open today to allow our conceptions of what is to open up, so that we be a people who are looking to what could be, what wants to be, what is emerging, what is possible. And so I'm just grateful for this remarkable human capacity to think, that allows us to be on this spiritual path, that allows us to ask the questions, that allows us to be in the seeking and searching of something more. And so I know for each one of us today that there is an opportunity in front of us to open up to something greater, to move through us. And so I'm just grateful for this space, the Resource Center for Nonviolence, that allows us to gather in this way. I'm grateful for each gathered here together today to take in these words, to be in this collective field of energy we are cultivating together. I'm grateful. So let each one of us move back to our breath and take a deep breath in. Let it go. As you breathe in, feel yourself being breathed. Know that the universe is moving through you. That one spirit is breathing each body in this room. We may appear separate, but there is only one of us here, and that one is the one who is breathing. And so let us just surrender to that current of life, to that breath, that love. We open up to what is possible as we open up to live in the question. And so we let it. And so it is.